everyone. Today we are going to be singing Zacchaeus Was a Wee Little Man to go along with Miss Kristen's story. Here we go. If you don't know it, you can just listen to me sing it once and then rewind this and listen to it again. Here we go. Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a wee little man was he. He climbed up in the sycamore tree, for the Lord he wanted to see. And as the Savior passed him by, he looked up in the tree, and he said, "Zacchaeus, you come down, for I'm going to your house today, for I'm going to your house today." Zacchaeus was a wee little man, and a happy man was he, for he had seen the Lord that day, and a very happy man was he, and a very happy man was he. That's all.
Hi MPC family, hi especially you MPC kids. It's good to be with you all today. This week's children's sermon, we are going to continue talking about how Jesus can transform us, specifically in our work. Now you might be thinking, Miss Kristen, I don't have a job. Well, I'm going to say you did do some work this week. Did you participate in virtual school? That's work. Did you do chores around your house? That's work too. I want you to keep this work in mind as we talk about our Bible story. Our Bible story today is about Zacchaeus, and you may remember him as that wee little man that we sing about. Well, his job or work was as a tax collector. And paying taxes is a normal thing that happens when you have a job or a house. And people were used to having some money taken to help pay for things. Well, Zacchaeus was known as not being a very fair tax collector. So let me show you what he did. So say you earned $10 for your work that you did. Well, paying taxes would take $2 for repairs or things like that. And people were used to it. But Zacchaeus, he'd take a little extra. He'd take about $2 more for himself in his own pocket. So people had less money than they anticipated, and Zacchaeus got pretty rich off of what he was doing. So people didn't like him very much. And one day Zacchaeus was at work, and he decided to take a break because he had heard that this man named Jesus was coming into town, and he was curious about who Jesus was. Now, since Zacchaeus was such a wee little man, he couldn't see above all the people who were gathered there. So he had to climb up in a really tall tree to see Jesus. So while he was up there, he saw Jesus was coming. And when Jesus passed right underneath of the tree where Zacchaeus was, Jesus looked up in that tree and he told Zacchaeus, "Come down because I'm going to stay at your house today." Well, Zacchaeus was very excited because he was thrilled that Jesus was talking to him, and so he came down really quickly. Now, the rest of the crowd wasn't very pleased with Jesus because they knew that Zacchaeus was not very fair in how he did his job. And they didn't understand why Jesus wanted to be with Zacchaeus. But what's amazing is that immediately upon interacting with Jesus, Zacchaeus knew deep in his heart that taking that extra money from people was wrong, because he told Jesus that he was sorry and that he was wrong for what he did. And he promised Jesus that he would give half of all the money he had earned to the poor, and he would repay every single person that he had taken money from double what he had taken. Jesus' presence had transformed Zacchaeus' heart. Now, you all have been hard at work with chores and virtual school and adjusting to this new normal. I know it hasn't been fun, and at times you may not have had the best attitude. Jesus met Zacchaeus at his work and transformed his attitude about his work. And I want to encourage you that Jesus can transform you, all of us too, in the middle of this season. Jesus will meet you in the middle of your work and will change your heart and mind and attitude about your work. Find some time just to take a break for a few minutes, like Zacchaeus. Read your Bible, pray, spend some time with Jesus. Ask him to meet you here in this season and to transform your heart to be more like His.
Well, as you can see, I'm not at church. I'm at a workplace. I'm at the workplace of my friends Travis and Ani Lambert, who run Booster Cat Salon and in Lake Worth here. And you might be saying, well, why are you there? Well, I'm not doing an advertisement, but I'm here because it represents where we spend most of our time during the week. Most people spend a lot of time throughout the week in their workplace. And that workplace can be a salon, it can be a school, it can be a hospital, it could be sitting in a truck, it could be in an office, it can even be at home. And some people work and don't even get paid. For example, the stay-at-home parent who manages the home and the kids. More than ever, we need to kind of understand how our faith interacts with our work. The coronavirus has brought up lots of anxiety, and the results are very challenging. People are losing jobs, losing income, and even in non-crisis times, people change jobs up to 6 times in their lifetime. Robotics are coming in and taking jobs away, and in the future, near future, we're going to see robotics taking the place of those in professional level vocations. And as Christians, followers of Christ, we recognize that the workplace can be a very challenging place, filled with many temptations. And in the middle of all of this, all of these challenges, many miss the connection of our faith to our work. And pastors often don't help. I've brought in a leader from our community, a business leader in our community, to some of my classes at PBA. And he's shared stuff about his understanding of leadership and so on. And I've asked him a number of questions to kind of get at this idea of the connection between faith and work. And I've asked him, how often does the Sunday morning sermon connect with his life Monday through Friday? And by the expression on his face, you can tell he's never even thought that it should connect. And maybe it's part of the problem of his pastor, who's not necessarily helping him make those connections. In the midst of this, we need renewal in our workplace. We've been in a series called The Lived Experience with Jesus. And we've talked about how when we encounter Jesus, when we have this lived experience with Jesus, he transforms us and he brings renewal to our community. And part of that community, our community, is our workplace. And time again in the Gospels, we see people who encounter Jesus, and it's brought that change, that renewal. And we want our workplaces to experience the renewal as a result of our personal transformation with Jesus. Our commitment to bring God's truth, love, and human dignity to our workplace, to all the people that we encounter, is so important. One of those examples in the Gospels is found in Luke chapter 19, verses 1 through 10. It's a businessman who is completely living for numero uno, for himself. And he has an experience with Jesus. So hear the text, hear the passage from Luke 19, 1 through 10. Jesus entered Jericho and made his way through the town. There was a man there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector in the region, and he had become very rich. He tried to get a look at Jesus, but he was too short to see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree beside the road, for Jesus was going to pass that way. When Jesus came by, he looked up at Zacchaeus and called him by name. "Zacchaeus," he said, "quick, come down. I must be a guest in your home today." Zacchaeus quickly climbed down and took Jesus to his house in a great excitement and joy. But the people were displeased. "He has gone to be the guest of a notorious sinner," they grumbled. Meanwhile, Zacchaeus stood before the Lord and said, "I will give half of my wealth to the poor, Lord. And if I have cheated any people on their taxes, I will give them back 4 times as much." And Jesus responded, "Salvation has come to this house today, for this man has shown himself to be a true son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save those who are lost." Zacchaeus' life is transformed. And it renews his work. Now, there's lots of interesting things in this story, but today I just want to highlight 2 very quickly. The first thing is this: Zacchaeus doesn't go out and sell everything and begin to wander around the countryside with Jesus. And in fact, Jesus doesn't ask him to do that. He doesn't ask him to give up everything and join his gang. Often people feel like when they encounter Jesus that they have to give up everything and become a pastor or a missionary or some kind of wilderness monk. But Jesus doesn't call us to that. His call is to love him and to be a part of his kingdom work. And that kingdom work can happen in a lot of different venues and a lot of different occupations, not just being a pastor or a missionary. So Zacchaeus is encouraged not to leave. Jesus doesn't say, "Leave your work and follow me." In fact, Jesus' encounter with Jesus, his lived experience with Jesus, causes him to embrace his work and embrace it in a new way, which leads me to the second point that I want to make. And this, what we do see is that his lived experience changes how he does work, how he sees his work in 2 ways. The first thing is this: he's moved from selfishness to generosity. Zacchaeus says he will give half of his possessions to the poor. Not half of his income, half of his possessions. This is important because he's moving from a place where he's being selfish to just being generous. See, in those days, a rabbi would say, if you're going to be generous, you give 20% of your possessions or income, and that would be generous. But Zacchaeus is overcome with his relationship with Jesus, his experience with Jesus, that he's filled with a spirit of generosity. Now, often we think generosity is about giving money to people, but generosity is so much more. Adam Gant is the youngest tenured full professor at Wharton School of Business and author of a book called Give and Take, where he found in his research that the secret to both happiness and productivity at work is giving back to people. Grant views opportunities for being helpful as a source of creativity, as a means for generating additional energy and productivity. And in fact, he's compiled a large body of evidence that says the greatest untapped source in the workforce for motivation is not financial incentives, and it's not career advancement, but it's a sense of service to others. Grant gives an illustration. He says, I never get a lot done when I frame my 300 emails in my inbox as answering emails. I have to look at it this way. How is this task going to benefit the recipient? So when you arrive at work tomorrow or sit down at your computer or phone at home because you can't go to your workplace, rather than getting deep fried in the marketplace pressure cooker, think of your every task as an opportunity to make someone's life better, whether that's your coworker, your customers, your shareholders, your boss, your children. The second way Zacchaeus is moved and renewed is he moves from cheating to honesty. He says, if I've cheated anyone, he would pay them back 4 times the amount. Now, in the text, the people are grumbling with Jesus because they see Zacchaeus as a notorious sinner. Why a notorious sinner? Well, they viewed tax collectors in a very negative way. One, they were collecting taxes for an oppressor, the Roman Empire. Second, many of those tax collectors would take and charge more so that they could keep that extra. And so maybe this is the case with Zacchaeus. He had been cheating people in their taxes, and he said, I'm going to give them 4 times what I owe them, what I took from them if I've cheated them. Now, that is an extreme change. See, in Jewish law, you could, if you were charged with something and you did something wrong, you wronged someone, you could need to repay them plus a 5th. And if you did something really wrong by stealing maybe a sheep or a goat or an oxen, you had to pay them back 2 times if that animal was still alive. Now, in very, very extreme cases where you stole a sheep or oxen and you killed that oxen or tried to get rid of it, you would owe them 4 times. So very extreme. And Zacchaeus is identifying and saying, listen, if I have done something wrong by cheating them, I am going to give the maximum back to them, which is 4 times the amount. So he moves from cheating and moves to this idea of honesty. Now, honesty we often think of as truth-telling, but honesty is way more than that. In the book Leadership Challenge, the authors in their research asked respondents to tell them what qualities they look for and admire in a leader. And according to their study, the most important quality was honesty. 88% said honesty was the most important. Honesty, they said, was not just truth-telling, but it's this idea of it's connected to values and ethics. People admire leaders who know where they stand on important principles and have confidence in their own beliefs. And God calls us to do the same. He calls us to practice and train ourselves in that which is good and right. And so we must practice our responses and actions in difficult situations and relationships and let God encode in our hearts His desire. We need to create that space that wears a groove in our heart, God's groove in our heart. And what's that encoding in our hearts? I think the first place to start is really the fruit of the Spirit, found in Galatians chapter 5. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So see your work as a place to practice grace in the midst of turmoil, to practice contentment among those who are grumbling, to practice kindness and praise others instead of demeaning them, practice joy and love. It's not a matter of becoming a better person, but it's letting your relationship, your lived experience with Jesus impact you every day. How do you handle negotiations? How do you treat an irritating client? How do you view your work? How do you love others on your path, no matter their position or disposition? A stressful board meeting may be a thinly disguised opportunity to practice redemption. The lived experience with Jesus. It challenges us because it transforms us. And when it transforms us, it gives us opportunity to bring renewal to our community, to our workplace. Have you allowed God to transform your life and renew you in your work? Do you see the connection? If not, begin to try to see your work as Jesus would want you to see his work. How would this renew your workplace? Let's pray. God, we come and we recognize that you've given us all a place to work, whether that's in a salon, a school, a truck, a hospital, an office, and even our homes. And we want to see you bring renewal in that workplace. And we recognize that renewal comes when you are transforming us. When we create that space in us that allows you to encode our hearts, to create that groove in our heart where we are filled with your Spirit and our character is changed. And we bring that character into our workplace. God, may we see you be at work in us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Nice. So we're very grateful that David McClymont has decided and agreed to join us for our little interview today. David works with the Palm Beach Symphony, and he has done many other roles in the city. Some of you may have seen him at Bear Lake, so we have a few members of the church there. But first of all, David, how have you been? How has your family been in the past couple of months?
Well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. We've been good. I think
Good.
we're adjusting to the new norm, trying to adapt and acclimate with these changes that we've all seen. But it's interesting that I think I've always been a big believer in 21 days to affect change. So, after about 3 weeks of going through this new norm, we adapt and we acclimate.
For sure.
So it's been a challenge, like many people throughout the country. I have 2 young kids that are in school, so trying to manage working from home and then managing their
And being
schoolwork
teacher at the
online,
same
exactly,
time as well.
gives you a
Yeah.
whole new appreciation for teachers.
For sure. So we're continuing our series on the lived experience of Jesus, and we're going to talk about, last week we talked about community engagement. We had Reverend Kevin Jones, and we're going to talk about faith and work this week. Can you take us back just a few years? What would have been your dream job growing up as a kid?
Well, as a kid, I played sports, like many young kids. So I grew up playing baseball, and I would go to spring training games in West Palm. So a big aspiration of mine was to grow up to be a professional baseball player.
What team would have been the dream team to play for?
The dream team for me would have been the Atlanta Braves, because at that time we didn't have the Marlins.
There we go.
Or any other Florida team. So I always
Right.
aspired to be an Atlanta Brave.
The closest team. Can you tell us now a little bit about what do you do for work now?
Sure. So right now I'm CEO of the Palm Beach Symphony, where I've served in that position for the past 6 years. It's been a very exciting journey. We've taken an organization that had celebrated its 40th anniversary when I arrived, that had very little impact in the community, that now is making a huge impact, educating close to 20,000 Palm Beach County students, hosting a wide variety of community outreach and educational programs. We have a new program called Nurturing Notes that works with mental facilities. So it's been exciting.
Could you say a little bit about your engagement with UB Kenzie as well in the school?
Sure. So that's one of the many schools that we actually donate instruments to. UB Kinsey is also the school where we just awarded the Instrumental Music Teacher of the Year at our Holly Jolly Luncheon, Susan Rodberg.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Can you on that? Can you just share a little bit about what are some of the things you enjoy the most about your job, and what are some of the things that you kind of struggle to fit into your kind of role?
I think one of the things that I enjoy the most is being able to make a difference in the community. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's really exciting to see how much difference we've made in the community with our educational community outreach initiatives. And now going from 6 years ago, where we educated 0 students in Palm Beach County, we're now educating 20,000 Palm Beach County students. We're giving away 50 instruments per year to students that otherwise wouldn't have instruments, and we're watching students like Valentina Palucci go from Dreyfus School of the Arts to the University of Miami by giving her the tools to be successful.
Beautiful.
So for me, that's been really, really
Beautiful.
rewarding. I think one of the challenges that we have is obviously being able to sustain that, being able to navigate the labyrinth within the community of sustaining our mission to continue to donate more instruments and to find ways that we can make more impact.
And so how do you connect your faith to your work?
That's a great question. When I think of faith, it's multifaceted. I think there's a lot of different layers to faith for me personally. I think if you think about faith in the context of Hebrews, where it's the assurance of hope and the conviction of things unseen, that's one layer. But I also think faith has a lot to do with having faith in the relationships that you have not only with God, but also the relationships that you have with your fellow employees, with the community, with your family. It's a confidence. It's a trust.
And what do you think faith gives to the arts? And how does the arts inform your faith or feed your faith? N.T. Wright is were you in our group when we read N.T. Wright, the theologian? He's one of the preeminent New Testament theologians, and I saw him speak at the University of St Andrews in Scotland. And he gave a presentation, and there was a Q&A at the end, and somebody asked him, other than the Apostle Paul, who do you think the greatest evangelists have been since the death of Jesus? And he kind of looked up to the sky for a second, and then just said, Handel and Bach. Next question. And it just made me think of, can you imagine if you were some German dude and you went to church on Christmas Eve and you heard Handel's Messiah for the first time? It would have just blown your mind. So for you, how do you think faith engages particularly with the arts?
Well, I think for the arts, it takes people on a journey. I think that people realize and appreciate the history that the arts have in every facet of the arts. And I think that for us, being a world-class symphony orchestra in Palm Beach County, I think we have the ability to give people hope, to allow people to travel back to time, and then more importantly, in times that we're in right now, realize that we're going to come out of this and to be hopeful.
So what advice would you give younger business people that are just starting their career, who are Christian and who want to make an impact? What advice would you give them on how to foster faith and career at the same time?
That's a great question. I've had many great mentors that have given me the ability to travel through different organizations and have different low levels of success. And one of the mentors always said to me, give far more than you ever expect to get, and you'll get far more than you ever hoped for. And that's something that I've always tried to live by, is just continuous try to invest in people and make deposits into people in relationships. And I think that if you're a young person that's starting out right now, we're inclined to want instant gratification and instant success. That's a natural psychological behavior, but I think that it takes time, and I firmly believe that you have to give far more than you expect to get. And in doing that, you'll get far more than you ever could expect to. But really invest in relationships. I know it sounds old-fashioned or cliche, but it's true. Invest in relationships.
Right, and I think it's often that we're led to believe that if you want to be successful, you have to be cutthroat. And anybody that's kind of in your way is an obstacle. And for you to kind of get ahead, you have to, literally at times, climb over the top of them to get your point or to get to where you want to be. And I think that the Christian ethic and the Christian call it's an upside-down economy. It's that we are called to give and share freely because we've been given so much. And it's not about selfishly holding on to the things we have, but our dreams are to grow organizations like the Palm Beach Symphony so they can bless the community.
It's so true, and actually I'm glad you brought that up, because that speaks to what we just did about a month ago. So many people would look through the lens of competition with the opera, the Maltz, and the ballet being our competitors. But we decided to go into a collaboration with those three organizations and a partnership with Barry Manilow, and we created a collaboration called One Voice.
Right.
So if we went into it with that mindset that it was competition and that we had to crawl above those other arts organizations, instead of saying, let's all get into the sandbox, let's figure out how we can create something that makes a difference, that makes an impact in the community, and makes the community better at a time where people truly need it, you're absolutely right.
And I think it's beautiful that the classical music can often have a reputation for being removed or only for like the elite or the upper middle class and upper middle class, but for you to really invest in pure money where your mouth is in the communities like the historic Northwest, to give those kids a chance and expose them to classical music from a early age, I think it's a beautiful thing.
For us, it's critical, and I agree. We feel passionate about making sure that we are accessible to people that might not have access to the symphony, both in terms of the instrument donations, our free children's concerts. We host free children's concerts each year. There's 6 of those that we host, where over 5,000 Palm Beach County students will come and watch free performances. So you're absolutely right.
Beautiful. So David, following up from some of your advice to younger leaders, and your experiences, you were kind of mentored. Who were some of the voices that spoke into your life and developed you, maybe in books or actual people and mentors who took you under their wing?
So a major influence for me was John Maxwell, because I felt that John Maxwell did a very nice job of communicating faith-based messaging, but also incorporating business and business strategy. So one of the things that I always thought was very interesting about him was being able to invest more into the people that are under you in an effort to grow them over time. And that was something that I never forgot. Also, there was a gentleman by the name of Jerry Bellis, who was a member at Bear Lakes. He was a Fortune 50 executive, very successful. And he would always say to me, David, manage your life based off of 2 principles: critical few and trivial many. And your success, both personally and professionally, will be based off your ability to distinguish the 2. Because people are always thinking that everything's critical when it's really not. There's a very small percentage of the things that we have, both in our personal and our professional life, that are critical versus trivial.
What's the difference for you between critical and trivial?
Well, what he always used to say to me is, imagine that you're a paramedic and you pull up to the scene of an accident on I-95, and there's 20 cars and there's bodies everywhere. And you have somebody that's over off to the side screaming that their arm's broken, but then you have somebody off to the side that's unconscious, not saying anything. As a paramedic, who's the first person that you take care of? Is it the person that's screaming with the broken arm, or is it the person that's unconscious? So if you use that methodology or that ideology in terms of everyday life, just trying to manage your business, manage your personal relationships, manage your children, parenting, and everything else, it really helps with being able to quickly identify what's truly critical and what's trivial. The other person that really made an impact on me too is Dr. Stephen Covey with 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I learned early on in my management career that it was really important to focus on the emotional bank account. It was something that I didn't know early on as a manager, to make more deposits into that emotional bank account with all of your relationships than you do withdrawals. And then at the end of that period of time, whether it be an hour, a day, a month, with that relationship, then you actually have a positive or a surplus in that bank account.
And I think that so often leaders are seen as this resource that they can come and speak, they can give, and they're sort of the figurehead. And for them to be seen to take time to rest, to take time away, can almost be seen as a weakness. That there should be this, like, you wake up at 4:30, check your emails, go for a 5-mile run, do an Ironman, like all these things that are the expectation of like the sort of the macho leader are things that we can do. But actually our call as Christians, as you say, is to invest in people and say it's not about the outcomes for me per se, it's about investing in people, and that if I invest in people, treat them well, they will flourish and in turn make my organization better.
Nothing satisfies me more than doing exactly that. And whether it be that staff member staying with me on the journey as we continue to grow with the organization that I'm working for, or having somebody that actually leaves the organization and goes on to bigger and better things. It truly, truly satisfies me. The other thing I think is really important too, talking about filling up and talking about your point about the perception of CEOs or leaders of organizations, you're absolutely right. For me personally, and I've mentioned this to you on a couple of occasions, going to Monday night's Bible study fills up my tank. It just fills up my tank. And going from Monday until Friday throughout the week and all of the different challenges that we experience as leaders of organizations and households, it is extremely beneficial for me.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite proverbs is iron sharpens iron. And I think in leadership positions, it's hard to feel like you can be off or ask for help. And I think to have a space of men who can sort of set aside all their accomplishments and just to sit down and be men, and just kind of help each other out and be each other, I think it's such a leveling, but such a powerful thing. Is that we all need space where we can just kind of be another guy around the table and not be the guy that people are looking to for answers, not be the guy who's like getting the phone calls to fix X, Y, and Z. Is that you can just be one of the guys and you can just show up. And I think it's such an important part of just rest and, as you say, fulfillment and being inspired in what you're given, and inspired in like how you can give to other people.
Completely agree.
Beautiful. Well, any more things you'd like to add about faith and work before we wrap it up here?
No,
Okay. Well, thank you so much for
Thank
your
you.
time, and thank you
Yeah,
for
appreciate it.
sharing with us.
Likewise. Thank you.
Ready.
Yeah.